Welcome to another episode of SportsVibe. SportsVibe episode 56 and the end of the NHL season. The Panthers defeated the Oilers 4-3 to win their first ever Stanley Cup and one heck of a series. I was honestly a bit disappointed because I did want to see the comeback
You picked the
happen.
Panthers, though.
I Yeah, I did. I thought they'd win, and then things kind of changed. I don't know. Honestly, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of like neutral-ish. I guess I was
I
kind of
mean,
just
me,
riding the
me,
momentum.
I'm more disappointed because one, I hate the
Yeah, I'm sure
Panthers,
you're more
but
disappointed.
but in a way, I'm kind of happy because in a strange way. Because let me explain. Uh, for one, we continue to show that despite it being Canada's national sport, we've been the superior country for 31 years in a
Hmm.
row. I'm sure majority of the players that play in the National Hockey League are Canadian. That's without a doubt a fact. Like over 3/4 of the players are Canadians. But they decide to play for American teams. You know why? Because America keeps on winning. Damn it! For 31 years strong, we have won the Stanley Cup. And so we've continued to show for three decades and counting that we are the superior country when it comes to hockey. So I guess there's one saving grace right there. But all jokes aside, I think the like one of the few Panthers I'm happy for that actually won the Stanley Cup is Sergei Bobrovsky. He's the
Hmm.
one Panther I'm truly
Yeah.
happy for. And of course, I hate Kachuk as a champion. I hate Sam Bennett as a champion. You know what? I'm fine with Barkov being a champion. He's fine. Barkov and Ekblad, they deserve it.
Mhm.
They've stuck through the Panthers when they were just a joke of a team back when they were drafted in 2013 and 2014 respectively. Like, and if you were hockey fans, if we were hockey fans, 10 years ago, or even or even 20 years ago, or even like after their '96 run to the Cup where they got swept by Colorado, there's constant relocation rumors for the Panthers, especially ironically, Quebec City, because that's where the Avalanche moved from. They were originally in the Quebec Northeast, and then they moved to Denver, and magically they won the Cup their first year in Denver. But so there's a lot of relocation rumors for the Panthers to Quebec City. They're a lo- they're and like the early 2000s Blackhawks, the team itself experienced lots of uh, lots of local blackouts. So like locals didn't even watch the games on TV. Tickets were dirt cheap. The arenas were just it seemed like the arenas they played in, they accidentally had people watching a hockey game rather than have like thousands of people sharing them on. But championships, they take years in the making. Unless if I don't know, you're like the Miami Heat who just decided to build a super team out of nowhere back in 2010. But uh, like, but especially hockey championships, that's the one where that's the one where it takes like a long time for a team, a franchise, a culture to truly develop and grow. And so that all started like 11 years ago when Barkov was drafted, when Ekblad was drafted, and it really started with those two. And of course, Kachuk drafted in 16, and Sam Bennett was drafted in 14 too. But of course, it wasn't drafted to the Panthers, as we know. Kachuk, of course, was drafted to the Flames, and these things take years in the making. And of course, Florida seemed to borrow a lot of pieces from the Buffalo Sabres, but with all that aside, then they get Bobrovsky in the 2019 offseason, and at a time when everyone was thinking, "What the hell is that contract? 7 years, $70 million." Over the last 2 years, Bobrovsky has seemed to prove that instead of that being an anchor dropped on his head, and so overall, the Panthers if we truly saw what the Panthers were like a couple of years ago, like 3 years ago or so, um, they were more of a high flying offensive team, not really focused more on defense. And so, of course, after when Joel Quenville was the coach of the Panthers, that was like the scheme, just run through a high flying offense. And of course, he resigned after the whole ordeal with the Blackhawks scandal. Then Andrew Burnett takes over, coaches the Panthers to a President's Trophy in 22. Then they get once again what appeared to be a recurring theme at the time, 2 years in a row, where they just get smacked in the face by the Lightning. Burnett gets fired, and then Paul Maurice comes in, and Paul Maurice at the time, and technically has the title today, the most coaching victories without a Stanley Cup title. And Paul Maurice, of course, was the Jets coach. Then he, and of course, I believe he got fired. I don't think he resigned. I forget which one. Uh, and he was already thinking that maybe his coaching career is over. And then the Panthers come calling in. They're like, we want you to coach." And then Paul Maurice takes over. Then of course they have the blockbuster trade of the century. Maybe not the century, but um, at least of the decade, probably, where they trade for Matthew Kachuk and they send over Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, to the Calgary Flames. At the time, I thought the trade was a win-win, maybe schemed more towards Calgary, but holy God, was I wrong, because that's a massive W trade for the Panthers and a complete L for the for the Flames, especially because Huberdeau. I don't know what happened to Huberdeau, but I guess getting back on track. Now the Panthers, instead of being this high flying offense, now they're more balanced in terms of defensive grit, being establishing a physical presence, quartering and covering the ice as much as possible, and of course still having a lethal forecheck, thus enabling the Panthers to score within 5 seconds at any given moment. And it took a lot of time for this Panthers team to truly click. Like we saw, especially last season, that the Panthers were Jekyll and Hyde, basically just treading water or slowly starting to sink. And really took the last 20 games of the 22-23 season for the Panthers to truly click. And of course, we know the story that happens there. No need to talk about that. And then after the 23 Stanley Cup, where they lost to Vegas in 5 games, um, then there's a whole speculation of like, oh, this is just a miracle run. These things happen. Panthers won't be back. They're not even going to make the playoffs. Everyone on the team is already injured. And then the Panthers come back in even greater full force, even with majority of their starters injured. And they come back again, and they make better trades. They're able to. Their team is still deepened, um, and of course now they have the experience of losing their first Stanley Cup, and it seemed to carry them throughout this entire run. And of course, I got excited when Edmonton was chipping back. I really thought Edmonton was going to pull the reverse sweep. I would have died of laughter if that happened. Sadly, it wasn't the case, but don't always get what you want. So, and at the end of the day, the Panthers, they went from a Cinderella story to immortality. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with like a lot of what you said. I mean, it's certainly been interesting, like how they built the team. I mean, obviously the Bobrovsky trade and so many of the other moves they made, and how they were more of an offensive first team. I mean, they won the President's Trophy, and then they kind of retooled. And over the past couple of years, I mean, obviously making it to the Cup Final against Vegas, where they were the big underdogs and lost, but then they came back better this year, and just even more, aggressive on defense. I mean, Bobrovsky, like, although, later on in the series he definitely had trouble. I mean, he was pretty solid. The Panthers really found their identity back, or they got their identity back in Game 7. I mean, I'm surprised that it was missing for 3 games where the Oilers kind of dominated them. But I mean, Game 7, the Panthers are back to their old selves. Being fighting for the loose pucks on the board, creating turnovers, getting chances. Of course, Bobrovsky played a big role in that, and the end of Game 7 was absolutely frantic. I mean, the Oilers trying everything they could to score a goal. I mean,
You,
McDavid
you,
had a
you know
chance
what remind you
scored a
know what
poke in every time.
the Game 7 ending of yesterday, and I will say it was a pretty darn good game.
It was a
Um,
good game, very exciting
I mean,
to watch.
like I said, I would have preferred if Edmonton won, but it didn't happen. But the ending of this Stanley Cup, it reminded me a lot of the ending of 2009 Game 7, where the Oilers were just pressing as much as possible, um, to score in the netminder. In this case, Bobrovsky. And 2009, Detroit was doing everything in their power to score on Fleury. And if you saw the last 30 seconds of the 2009 Stanley Cup, which was just amazing, like especially Fleury, he was making save after save, and then with the clock winding down, Detroit gets a shot just like in the center of the goal, and Fleury makes this awesome diving save and comes out of nowhere, and he blocks the puck pretty much as time expires. Like, of course, it wasn't exactly like that. The Panthers were stalling by keeping the puck pretty much glued to the rim of
Right.
the ring to the
Yeah.
rim of the ice rink. So,
Mm-hmm.
of course, not as dramatic, but still, like especially in the last 5 minutes, the Oilers had a million chances to
I
score to
know,
score in
and
Game 7, and it
they,
didn't happen.
they were
Um,
denied.
and as we were talking about team building, like the Oilers were a decade in the making because after the 26 Stanley Cup Final, um, where they lost the Carolina Hurricanes in 7, the Oilers pretty much went for a downfall, and it took a lot of first round picks, especially a lot of first overall picks, for the Oilers to finally start developing something. Of course, the start of the Oilers where they began was Ryan Nugent Hopkins, when yesterday was actually the 13th anniversary when he got drafted first overall by the Oilers in 2011. And what a story that would have been if he had won the cup on the anniversary of the day he got drafted. Would have been a hell of a story. And of course, when there's Taylor Hall, who was drafted by Edmonton. Then of course Leon Draisaitl came third overall, and of course McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Oilers, they took a long time to build up to where they could begin. First, getting back to the playoffs in 2018, then having a regression year in 19, and then slowly they started to build up. And then in 21, they make the playoffs, only to get swept by the Jets. 22, they make the conference finals, only to be only to be outmatched by the Avalanche in every single way. 23, they make it to the second round, only to be outmuscled by Vegas. So sometimes it takes a lot of losing to get to where you need to be to bring out the best version of yourself. And the Oilers, they had their it seemed like there were multiple times when they're just about ready to go home. It looked like maybe Vancouver is going to beat them in the second round. It looked like Dallas was maybe going to beat them in the conference finals, but the Oilers changed because
Mm-hmm.
not only and seemingly like the Panthers, they in a way like in a very how do I describe it, like in a very large nutshell, both teams kind of mimic the same identity where they shifted from this high flying lethal guns blazing offense to having a more balanced scoring attack with more emphasis on like having an offensive defenseman and then creating a presence by trapping around the corners. So that's how the Oilers ended up shifting their identity. Of course, the big move of that, if I remember correctly, during the 23 deadline was when they traded for Matthias Ekholm. Like that's when you knew Edmonton was getting a bit serious about this. Of course, that trade wasn't enough, but still, um, that showed that Edmonton had changed as a team. And um, so while this is absolutely devastating for the Oilers, and um, they should absolutely be proud of the heights that they achieved, and I surely expect them to be a cup contender next year. And keep in mind, they had to change everything on the fly from the beginning of the season when Woodcroft got canned 12 games into the season. The Oilers were pretty much dead last. The only teams they were ahead of were the Blackhawks and the Sharks. Not exactly looking great.
Right.
The team was looking broken, exhausted, and we didn't know what was going to go on. What was going to happen to Dreisaitl's free agency? Will McDavid stay in a couple of years? What will happen to Ken Holland? I mean, I thought Ken Holland should have been fired at the time, but the team turned it around quite a lot. Uh, and so ultimately, like the Oilers, like this entire season for the Oilers has been a has been consisted of losing, then going on a tear, having a small losing streak, going on a tear, having a small losing streak, going on a tear, especially culminated with the 16-game winning streak in the middle of the season. Like the Oilers were the hottest team in the NHL at the time, and they looked like it during games 4, 5, and 6. Just couldn't pull it out in Game 7, and it's a damn shame because they had their chances. They had their chances, and they couldn't capitalize. It sucks, but the best experiences to learn from are the ones where you didn't succeed. And if there's any saving grace for the Oilers, it's this: the Panthers were in your same exact spot last year. They lost the Stanley Cup Finals, and then they redeemed themselves the following year. And also, while we're on the Oilers wagon, and we're talking about goats, uh, Gretzky lost his first Stanley Cup to the Islanders in '83, and he leads the Oilers on a redemption victory in '84 against that same Islanders team. So McDavid, while he lost this first year, I don't see a reason why the Oilers should not be back. Although, I mean, I haven't exactly studied their cap situation. One thing I would really like the Oilers to do: trade for a defenseman, and my, frankly, I think they should set their eyes on a defenseman within the Atlantic Division, specifically the Ottawa Senators, Jacob Chikrin. Just throwing it out there. And I guess we'll get to the Oilers in a little bit. I guess while I'm talking about the Senators, yesterday
I
during
saw
Game 7 of the goddamn Stanley Cup,
that.
Don Sweeney, you trade away Linus Allmark, a Vezina Trophy winner, to the Ottawa Senators for Corpusalo, a bottom six forward, a first round pick, I guess, too. But I don't know what to think of this. I mean, you saw my opinions. I think so.
Hmm.
Ottawa won that trade without even trying. I, I
Yeah,
genuinely,
that was just a mess. Like I can't even believe that went through. I mean, it's just like, I mean, Vezina Trophy winner, like just great goalie, and they just traded him away for like next to
th-
nothing. It's crazy.
this trade is completely disrespectful to Allmark. I mean, Jacob Markstrom got traded for a first. Jacob Markstrom, the inconsistent Jekyll and Hyde, got traded for a first, and Kevin Ball. By comparison, Linus's value is well worth above that. And I understood that going into the deadline, I mean going into the free agency, that the Allmark trade was all but inevitable. And I mean, as much as I didn't want it to happen, and it's funny is that at the end of the season press conference, where Don Sweeney was asked about the status of about Linus, he said he intended to keep the goaltending tandem alive. No, he said he turned out to be a liar. Uh, and I could, I feel like there would have been better teams to trade Linus to, because this is completely disrespectful to Allmark. Like I like, of course, like during the trade deadline last season, it's rumored that he nixed the deal to the Kings. Um, I don't know what to think of this trade, man. Like, if I were to say what I really want to say, this thing would be like probably like 2 hours long. I don't want to do that. It's not worth it right now.
Eh,
It's really not worth it. But I mean, I think a team that could have really used Linus Allmark, and this is one of my favorite teams to root for in the West, because mainly because I love this guy. Linus to the Colorado Avalanche. I
yeah.
could
See,
have
that'd
gotten
be
behind that.
that's a one.
I could have gotten behind that.
Yeah. I mean,
But
yeah.
but no,
It's the
there's even
Senators.
rumor.
It's the
Yeah,
division rival, and they're not
there's even
particularly
rumors
very
that
good either.
Vegas was interested. I mean, I doubt we are ever going to trade to the Carolina Hurricanes because they're an Eastern Conference rival, and of course they're not an Atlantic Division rival. But it's like still, sure, in the trade as it was like it was like rumored we could possibly get Martin H's in exchange for Allmark. do we really want to make Carolina stronger? No. So it's like we're better off trading to a Western team. And the best ideas were probably Colorado. I mean, it wasn't gonna be LA because it was rumored Allmark nixed that deal during this trade deadline season. So probably could have been Colorado or even Vegas, because Vegas apparently loves new toys every year. So yeah, but
Hmm.
yesterday I was angry during the entire Stanley Cup just because of Don's the nerve to do this during the Stanley Cup
During
Finals.
the, I know, right?
You
It's like putting
jerk!
the books on
And
the game at that
and
point.
this isn't the first time Don Sweeney's pulled something off like this. If you like, during the Patriots Super Bowl parade in 2017, that's when Don Sweeney decided to fire Claude Julien just to just, he just needs like a greater outlook. That way, when he fires someone or does something, it doesn't gain as much attention as it should. Because now what are people talking about? People are just talking about, oh, Panthers redemption, Panthers redemption. Of course, I couldn't even enjoy Game 7 that much anymore because of this jerk.
Um,
Thanks, Don Sweeney.
yeah, it's just weird how they. I
I
mean,
could
like they
I
already
couldn't enjoy
started.
the game. I could not enjoy the game because of this jerk.
Yeah, during the game is, well, that's just another level. But I mean, they started doing the trades early, and I think part of the reason is because the draft's in a few days, and they dragged the series out for like a month. They put 2 games in between like every game, and I travel time in this series that's probably even more necessary than
Yeah,
usual. But
I mean,
it's like
but
the
but
GM's
still,
gonna
like
jump on it. But
even
during the game final, it's just
yeah,
ridiculous.
I don't want to hear the travel day excuse because even Boston, Vancouver, that was like they were operating on 1 day travel day, and then like back in 2011 they were operating on, and it's Boston, Vancouver. That's literally coast to
Yeah,
coast. So I
right.
mean, of course, this is southeast coast to northwest Canada, so
Yeah,
that's on a
so
bigger
it's a
scale.
bit
I'll
more.
give them that. But still, like the Boston Vancouver series is, of course, Bruins had to fly to Vancouver first 2 games, then both teams would fly to Boston one travel day, and then they'd play the next day, and then of course repeat that for five,
Six.
6, 7. So
Right. It's a lot of travel. I think it's just the media contracts too, because the NBA also does the same thing. And then the NHL delayed their. I mean, they didn't want to interfere, so the NHL would do one the day after. So I mean, both NBA and NHL usually have 3 games in between, and I guess it still didn't feel that bad in the NBA because like the series was over in 5. But we got some good hockey out of the series. I mean, I was happy to see the
listen,
comeback.
I'll just
You
say
know.
I think you'll agree with me on this. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals was better than the entire NBA playoffs.
I mean, like, I don't know about better than the entire playoffs, but definitely better than the NBA Finals, and definitely better than a large part of the NBA playoffs. I mean, I don't think there's really a question that the Stanley Cup playoffs were by far better this year. And I mean, it was
Well,
just, I mean,
well,
it's
that's
way
been
more
the
exciting.
superior sport for a long time now in the
Yeah.
playoffs.
I mean, the final NBA finals weren't great. Some of the other series had their moments, like Knicks Sixers, Knicks Pacers, Pacers Celtics had some close games. But I mean, more so in the West, I think Wolves, like what was the series? Wolves Nuggets. I mean, it was exciting, but at the same time, there's a lot of blowouts. And by the time we got to the finals, like, oh my goodness, it's just like a lot of lopsided series, lopsided games.
Yeah.
I mean, game 2 and 3, there was some excitement with the Mavericks, making the big comeback in Game 3 and the Celtics thwarting it. So I wouldn't say it was all boring, but compared to the Stanley Cup, I mean, like, not even close. Like, the Stanley Cup, every game, even if the games score-wise are kind of lopsided, they're all interesting. It's just the nature of the sport, and then the comeback and the Oilers falling like short, but, able to kind of save it. I really thought the Oilers were going to win, though. Like, it took me a long time to get convinced. This is exactly why I did not want to hold out hope, because like I knew I was going to be disappointed. But after Game 6, I was like, they could do it. And then like, sure enough, they don't. But I mean, Game 7 was like really so exciting because I mean, all the goals in the game were really exciting. First of all, I mean, the Verhaeghe's deflection,
I mean,
that was
that was his
great. The
first. That,
Oilers.
that was his first goal since he scored the opening goal within the Stanley Cup Finals.
Right,
He was
yeah.
pretty much ice cold after that.
He
And
was
then
ice cold for
and
the
then
longest
Matthias
time.
Matthias Janmark answers right away on
Yeah, the Oilers on the breakaway, they were like that
yet
way
again
in games
another
3 and 7.
Oilers breakaway.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
like, yeah,
Reinhardt scores the
that
game-winning
was an
goal in the
absolute
second period.
that was an absolute snipe there, and then that's pretty much all she wrote. But I mean, at the same time, like not for a lack of effort. I mean, the Oilers just kept shooting, and Bobrovsky was back.
And
After a few half games.
Kachuk missed a strange one when the game was tied 1-1.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
like he tried to chip it. I don't know. Maybe I'm using golf terms, but he tried to drive his stick in, just timed the puck to get just above the shoulder pad of Skinner, but it ended up soaring above the net. So
yeah. I think I saw that one too. Yeah, there's a
yep.
lot of missed opportunities, but kind of full after a lot of these games were higher scoring games. This one's kind of low score thriller, and then. I mean, yeah, Bobrovsky after a few off games, I mean, he had a great performance. He was locked down. The Panthers defense, I mean, even when like Bobrovsky lost his stick, like McDavid had such a good attempt there. Panthers deflected that, and then
No,
Bobrovsky dove on
that's where
that.
Gustav Forsling
Yeah,
was perhaps the
excellent stick
clutchest player
check.
on the ice then.
That would have been for sure a goal, but he was right there now.
The one, I mean, sure, McDavid's going to get a lot of heat for putting up 0 points in Game 6 and in Game 7, and
Yeah,
deservingly
yeah,
so. I
yeah.
mean, sure, he won. I mean, I don't know how. Kind of mixed feelings that he won the Conn Smythe, but before I get to that, I'll just say this one thing off here. There are people who deserve more criticism than McDavid. I think Draisaitl for one thing for pretty much not showing up for the entire Stanley Cup Finals, and Ryan Nugent Hopkins, who also pretty much did not show up for the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, it's not controversial to say that the top six should not be like overshadowed by the bottom six. Like Connor Brown, I mean Connor Brown had a magnificent playoffs, especially the Stanley Cup Final. Connor Brown, Warren Fogle, those guys, you could argue, had a much more impactful Stanley Cup Finals series than you know McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, all these people. So it's um, like I feel like really just the entire like Oilers first and second line should get more heat. And surprisingly, Darnell Nurse does not deserve as much heat because Darnell Nurse had actually somewhat stepped up his play in the Stanley Cup Finals, especially after Game 3. So there's something there, but still. But anyways, now going on to the Conn Smythe, I've kind of
Mhm.
got mixed feelings about this because on one hand, without a doubt, McDavid was the best player throughout this entire playoffs. But on the second hand, I've always said this that you know you shouldn't get participation trophies. Like so, uh, again, kind of mixed bag. And the Conn Smythe is awarded to the best player throughout the playoffs, but still, like there is still a best player in the playoffs for the team that won the Stanley Cup. That's what I think. Like
Right. Yeah.
the two contenders would have been Barkov and Bobrovsky.
Yeah, I
So
agree. I guess I
I
feel like they probably couldn't give it to Bobrovsky after he got benched in Game 4, and then
probably could
Game
have
Five
given it to Barkov.
probably could have given it to Barkov. I agree, and then even Game 5, Game 6, 5 goals apiece. But yeah, I mean Barkov I think played well, but I guess if they're really going with best player in the playoffs, like entire playoffs, then you can go McDavid, and even in this series, he definitely he had way more points than anyone on the Panthers, and it's just Game 6 and Game 7 again. Like it's not a good look if you don't have any goals or any points. So I mean, it's a weird like thing when you give it to like the best player in the losing team. Like it just he didn't even come out and get it. Obviously, like it's just a weird
I mean,
feeling.
the
So
question. I mean, like both sides, especially the Canadian media. Like I've heard over the past like night and this morning, were like, you know, what did McDavid do the right thing in not going out to accept the award? Some media outlets were saying yes. Some media outlets were saying no. I mean, like and some were calling his act classless, and some were even calling his act full of class. So I'm like,
right,
it's a
yeah.
mixed bag of things. But it's like, would you ever want to accept a losing trophy? I mean, listen, the Conn Smythe is not a losing trophy. Obviously,
Yeah,
it's not a second place medal. But still,
right.
you just lost the biggest event of your life for
Hmm.
this time. Why would you want to accept a trophy? Like, sure,
Yeah,
you're the most dominant guy for 2 months, but I don't blame McDavid for not wanting to accept the trophy. I have no problem saying that.
yeah, me too. 'Cause in that moment, like you want to be there for your teammates, and that's more important. You just lost the Stanley Cup, the biggest trophy, and you're not really thinking of the individual accolades and that at that time, especially. So I mean, it's just I saw that thing though. That trophy is also huge, just
Yeah,
like the Stanley Cup. It's like you know
The
what I
Conn
mean?
Smythe is an awesome trophy.
Yeah, it looks so cool with all the Canadian like the Maple Leafs and all that
Well,
stuff.
The owner Conn Smythe used to be a part-time owner for the Leafs before Harold Ballard basically kicked him out.
Gotcha. Yeah, but I mean the thing looks huge and it's nice, but I mean I still think that one of the coolest traditions and in all sports is definitely the players getting to skate around with the cup, and
Of course,
great seeing that one again. ESPN didn't really, that was
this
important.
is further proof that ESPN no that not ESPN that the National Hockey League made a terrible decision giving a contract deal with ESPN for the broadcasting rights for this thing. Barkov, the
I
guy who's been
know.
tortured by the Panthers for the last 11 years of his life, the captain, lifting up the trophy, and ESPN misses the shot. Uh,
Just like,
Listen, I
come on,
hate
guy.
listen, this is coming from a guy who hates the Panthers. Are you kidding me? How do you miss that?
I know, like they were watching him like they had him skate, but then like he just skated away, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like
Listen,
it's terrible.
listen, Gary Bettman. If you're ever listening to this thing, please, first thing you need to do to be a better commissioner, nix the ESPN deal. Second thing you need to do, bring back the NHL and NBC.
Yes.
Third thing you should do, if you want, alternate finals coverage between TNT and NBC. I think we'll all be happy there because I mean I like listening to Wayne Gretzky talk.
Yeah,
I mean,
TNT that one's pretty good. Yeah,
listen. Paul Bisnet annoys me, but there's also Henrik Lundqvist, so it balances out.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think those are all the pretty much all the storylines from the Stanley Cup and everything around it. And yeah, I mean that pretty much covers that. I mean, it's been an eventful, exciting hockey season. Well, I mean, the NHL draft's also coming up, so it's the NBA draft. So I mean,
I mean,
that should be exciting.
Hockey has the headline of Macklin Celebrini going to the Sharks, and
Right.
so we at
Yeah.
least know who the consensus number one pick will be right there. But still, I don't bother watching the drafts like for any. I mean, occasionally I'll watch the NHL draft. I mean, the NFL draft just purely to see what the Patriots are picking. But other than that, nothing else. I don't care.
I mean, I feel like the NFL draft is probably the one people want to watch the most, especially when your team's
What's the point?
constantly
What's the point of sit?
high up there. But maybe not the whole thing. At least maybe like the first round. It's always exciting. There's so much speculation around it for months and months and months. I guess it's just
There's
nice
no
to,
to me.
what I mean?
There's no point of sitting in front of a television for 5 hours just watching guys dressed in ridiculous suits to walk on a stage. No point in
Yeah, I
that.
mean, you can just see the thing on social media. I think the first round's fun, especially when your team's picking high up. It could be a game changer. After that, it kind of just drags on for when day two and three. It's just you could just read them on Twitter and wherever else you get your sports news from. But yeah, I mean, NBA, NHL's drafts are coming up. Yeah, I mean, NHL, there's definitely a consensus number one in Macklin Celebrini. NBA, I think, is like very open, like up in the air. And I think with all this, the Stanley Cup going on so long, I think the drafts have kind of stuck up on us a little bit. But I mean, for the NBA, like last year, obviously, Wembanyama was in consensus number one. This year, not really, too many. I mean, there's no real consensus pick. There's the talent levels is a bit lower, like at the high end of it. Honestly, I really don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, I know the Hawks have the number one pick, but I don't really know how much that's really worth compared to other years. But I mean, I'm excited to see it. I guess. I mean, that's not even true. I'm probably not really gonna watch it, but I mean, it'll be exciting to see. Even though like the Nets don't have a pick, or the Rockets have their pick at 3. But I just really don't know. I mean, some of the like names I'm seeing like Alexander Sarr, Reed Shepherd from Kentucky, Stefan Castle, some of the big stars from March Madness, Dalton Connect, Donovan Clingan, Zach Edey is probably going to be drafted at some point, or well, not even probably, but centers are important. But yeah, I mean, it's just not like, and then Kyle Filipowski, it's just not really that big of a deal in my opinion. I don't know. I'm just not really feeling that one.
It's not a
Um,
big deal.
yeah, it's just kind of is what it is. I mean, I kind of used to watch it because it's like in the summer and it's they have that at Brooklyn. It's nice when they have like some stars in the beginning, and it's nice to see like the success. I guess that's the cool part, like seeing that like people's lives are going to change, and the franchise, like it can affect the franchises, and it's just a lot of excitement and new beginnings. But this year I feel like it's really like just gonna just be whatever for the draft. I mean, it's just so like, yeah, as it is, it's already not the most exciting thing. This year I feel like it's really just gonna be not whatever. I feel like there's a lot more uncertainty, and like anyone can really take anyone in the beginning, at least, and then so I mean there's no consensus 1, 2, or 3, so I mean that's kind of where I stand with that. But I think that is kind of next up on the sports calendar, seeing those two events go down. But yeah, I mean, I guess I wanted to also talk about the Cricket World Cup. Moving on to the knockout stages, there's been a lot that's happened in the Super 8, that I feel like we should get to first. But India beat Australia, and so did.
I was not expecting that.
I mean, yeah,
I thought India was going to blow it.
yeah. Rohit Sharma had a big game after a quiet tournament, so that really
About
got them started. Sure.
about damn time
Yeah,
he
I
had.
know.
But if there's one player who's really been struggling, if not been flat out awful, and it's quite surprising, it's Kohli. Kohli's been trash. Like for the past 6 games now, he's been trash, trash, trash,
Hmm.
trash, trash. Oh, and oh yeah, trash. Like, and honestly, I have no idea what the hell is wrong with the guy. Like, I mean, sure, Kohli's a much better player in one day or in a national test matches and all that, but I don't know what happened this year. Like, he just he can't be relied upon for anything. It seems like if Kohli were to score 10 runs, it's a miracle now.
I know. It's
I
just
mean,
not. Yeah.
listen, no disrespect, but you're being outplayed by Hardik Pandya. Hardik Pandya is a good player, and he's a Swiss
Right.
Army knife for the Indian team. But you're getting vastly outplayed by Hardik Pandya.
Yeah, I feel like India's really just had to rely on their middle order. Like Surya Kumar Yadav has had many big
Rishabh,
games in the tournament.
Surya,
Rishabh Pant as well. Yeah,
Rishabh Pant, the occasional Dubé,
Dubang, he's been good for India as well.
Pandya. I
Fun,
mean,
yeah. Really, that whole middle order, because I mean Sharma's been quiet most of the tournament, and
no,
Kohli's been like absolutely quiet.
the top two outside of Sharma's 92 yesterday. The
Uh-huh.
top two has been just pure garbage.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, it's like their openers will go out in single digits every time, and have to rely on the rest of the order and the bowlers to save them. And I mean, they've been able to do that. I mean, India's looked really good, but at the
I
same
mean,
time,
but that's the problem though. They're already relying too much on this right now. Like you can only rely on Boomer to bail you out so much.
yeah, I think that's why Rohit Sharma's 92 off of 41 balls. That was huge because he picked the right game to do it against. Because it's a little bit of revenge, I guess, for India against Australia. But I
No,
mean,
no, no,
also
no, no, no.
not quite. Right?
That doesn't. But here's the thing. I
Right
don't think.
opponent though. They
No,
needed that. Otherwise, Australia would have given them a very tough time with
well,
it
here's the
also
thing though.
going out for.
Australia is out now because Afghanistan beat Bangladesh yesterday through
Yeah.
DLS. If
Did you see
Bangladesh,
that game? That was absolutely
I
like all
did.
the theatrics of it with
I did, especially with the guy going down with the hamstring injury. Well, going down.
the
Yeah,
rain
like,
string, as like
come on, dude.
Zampa
Listen,
called it the rain string. Yeah, it was just
like, dude, come on. You didn't get shot by a sniper rifle. Get up.
right, like the worst acting, like by Gulbuddin, like
I mean,
naive. Like it was just
you
so
made
ridiculous.
soccer look good within that 5 seconds there. You made soccer
I
players look
mean,
good.
it was just like the most ridiculous. Like
Yeah, I mean,
the
here's the
acting
thing.
wasn't even good. Like that's like the thing. And then they went into rain delay. Then he comes back. Then he bowls. He takes a wicket. And then like when the match finished, he's like running faster than anyone else. Like I mean, it
Yeah,
was just like it was
like come on,
comical.
man.
Like I mean,
Like,
like I just could not believe. Like I mean, I know what they were trying to do and all of that, but
of
like
course, I mean
absolutely ridiculous.
Bangladesh. I mean, regardless, they were going to be eliminated. You could see
Yeah.
Bangladesh was trying to play spoiler. They're trying to get the 115 by 12, I think
Right.
by 12 overs or so.
Yeah,
Uh,
they didn't really. They kind of didn't really try to do that. Like at a certain point, like they just kind of. I think they just wanted the win, even though like they didn't.
y-
They I don't.
no,
They
it
weren't
seemed
really aggressive in
no
chasing the total and twelve
it
over.
seemed like their strategy was to do like a slow troll death to Afghanistan because
Yeah,
it was once it became feasible, it wasn't achievable. Where I think by the
right. Yeah, I
12th
think initially they wanted it, and
yeah,
then
that
they wickets
yeah
started falling, and they wanted to.
by the 12th over they're at like 80 runs or so if I remember correctly. That's when like of course it's all but impossible. So it seemed like they're taking the approach of just slowly trolling Afghanistan
Yeah,
for the
just chip
win.
away
But
at
of
it.
course that didn't work because Afghanistan took like took
Yeah, their whole
multiple
order just
wickets.
went down. Like besides like Witten Dust, like the opener, like yeah, they
Yeah.
just kept getting guys out.
And now
For not much
Afghanistan
more than single digits.
and now Australia is out.
Yeah,
Big
two
surprise for
minutes.
me. And
Mhm.
Afghanistan is in the semifinals.
For
Whatever.
the first time in their history. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
they could have made the playoffs last year in the Cricket World Cup, but ironically, Australia ended up well,
yeah. Australia played. Yeah,
Specifically Glenn Maxwell ended up murdering them.
right. Yeah,
So in a way, this is kind of redemption,
it's
kind
kind
of
of like yeah.
indirectly.
It's like all the teams that Australia basically ruined their chances are now like in the semifinals or further. Like Afghanistan, South Africa, could they also beat India? Could they also beat? And then
So
of course
now we're
India's playing England, who's Australia's big Ashes rival as it is. So
yeah,
but yeah, South Africa's a different story. They're another team that also has trouble getting over the line, and they have a good chance of winning one. I think that would be their first ever T20 if they can
so
get it.
now we have South Africa versus Afghanistan and India versus England.
Yeah, two fascinating matchups that I would say.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think the India versus England matchup that one's probably going to get a lot more allure, but
right.
I
Actually,
think Afghanistan should not be underestimated. And after
no,
all,
definitely not. Yeah,
after I mean you're here in the semifinals for I mean listen I hate DLS because I think it's a BS way to call a win in cricket, but you still made it. That's all that matters. And sure, you beat Bangladesh. It was it's not like you're beating a Titan in Australia, but still, you still made it over. You still made
yeah,
it over here. You're in the semifinals. You have a legitimate chance now. So South Africa should not take Afghanistan lightly. And as for India versus England, it's probably going to be a bloodbath either way, no matter who wins. I mean, I still stand by saying I don't expect India to win because they have a tendency to imitate the Clippers in the pivotal moments, like especially in the semis and the finals. So I still don't expect the Indian team to win, but maybe I'm reverse jinxing them. I don't know, but I think in all likelihood, uh, I think we can expect maybe a South Africa versus India matchup.
ooh, man, that'd be nice. That'd be an interesting one for sure. Yeah,
I think that's what we could expect, but I would not be surprised to see England versus South Africa, England versus Afghanistan. I mean, I guess the one matchup that would surprise me would be India versus Afghanistan, but um, I guess here, you know what? Let me put it in terms of rankings that I expect. I expect to see number one India versus South Africa. Number two would be England versus South Africa.
hmm
Three would be England versus Afghanistan. Four would be India versus Afghanistan.
right.
So
Yeah,
one being most likely, four being
I got
least
you.
likely.
I could definitely see India versus South Africa. I feel like both of these teams are playing. at a really high level on both sides of the ball, like batting and bowling. And um, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the most likely to be a good opportunity for either one to win their first tournament in a while. At the same time, I do think Afghanistan, like that's definitely not a team to take lightly. I feel like they could give South Africa a tough time. Both teams have some good spinners, so that should be an interesting an interesting game. I think South Africa has the advantage. India versus England, a chance for revenge for India after England beat them. I think chased down like 168 or one. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
they chased down 168. It got 170 and 170 for O in the last World Cup in the semis. So I mean, another chance for some revenge there. I wouldn't take England too lightly either. Obviously, I mean they've been good. I mean, obviously they beat the U.S. pretty easily. But I mean they struggled against some of the other better teams. Like they lost to Australia, they lost to South Africa, but they beat West Indies, and that's a solid team. And they're definitely a power hitting side like Phil Salt and Jess Butler. I mean they can they're openers, so I mean, they have a lot of power. So I mean it's not a team to take lightly. That being said, I do think India just the depth they have. I mean, they have good bowlers right now. I mean, their batting lineup is so deep this year. I mean, like they've won so many games just without even with Sharma and Kohli, going out so early, they've been able to win a lot of tough games. I mean, if either one of them goes off, I think, England probably loses that game. So yeah, I'd probably say the same thing in long story short. But yeah, India, South Africa probably being the most likely, but I wouldn't sleep on like Afghanistan
I mean,
or
England would be more
or
lethal
England.
if England would be more lethal if Ben Stokes was actually playing, but he's not playing this year for the
Yeah,
T20 team.
that's true as well. Yeah, and then Chris Jordan, like the bowlers have been doing good. The opening batsmen have been doing good, but yeah, I mean it's interesting. And then I guess another wrinkle is that game might be rained out, so I'll have to keep an eye on the weather. And if it does, then India would go through. So I mean, I feel like that's definitely important. There's a large chance for or a washout, but maybe not. I mean, they're I'm sure they're gonna try they're gonna try to get at least a 5 over side game in if the rain stops and they have all day to do it. So good chance that that game ends up getting played at some point. The other game is reserved day. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but I mean, just a lot of drama with the whole Super 8 stage, especially when Afghanistan, Bangladesh determined the fate of Australia as well as both of them, and the way that that happened with the rain delay and everything, and going down to the wire, Afghanistan taking the wickets at the end, winning through DLS, and India, Australia, I think was probably my favorite game of the tournament. Obviously, those are two high-powered sides, and
I mean,
it caused a big change by
I
Australia.
kind of like the U.S. versus Canada because it pretty much turned into a home run derby.
Yeah, I like that one too. That was a great chase by the United States. That was the first game of the tournament, and it was an exciting one. Aaron Jones really showing up big, and obviously the U.S. beating Pakistan was remarkable. I mean, what the U.S. was able to accomplish was incredible. Hopefully, I think it puts the U.S. on the map in cricket, and I think it already has. I mean, I'm sure it's going to make things more popular going into the next one. They've already qualified for T20 in 2026 in India, Sri Lanka. So obviously, seeing the game grow in the U.S. and it definitely as an Indian American and just as a cricket fan, like I think that's so cool to kind of see how well they did and like seeing some of their stars like Saurabh like Netravalkar and took some big wickets and just the talent level on this team and like batters like Aaron Jones and Andre Goose like they had some big performances. Yeah, I mean, and then of course India's been so dominant. Being Australia definitely did feel sweet, and it was an exciting game. They put up 205, and Indian fans, I'm sure, were still nervous as Travis had also had 76. But I guess once he got out, the chase kind of fell apart. But that was a good game. And
Yeah,
of course,
I thought Maxwell was going to hold it, but
yeah, me too. Yeah, that was another. Yeah, Maxwell also could have, definitely played. He had a pretty decent role in there, but he could have held on a bit longer. But yeah, so anyway, I mean, I think the knockouts are gonna be fun. So we got some good games, but yeah, I mean, it's been an exciting Cricket World Cup. We'll have more T20. I mean, we'll definitely go over this more next week when the final is finished. But I think that just about covers everything we wanted to get through. I mean, it's been exciting. Obviously, we're shifting now away from the NBA and NHL seasons. Stanley Cup Final is in the books. The Cricket World Cup coming down to the final stages and the knockout. It's been a great month of that. So, well, I guess we'll shift over to other sports. Probably talk some more baseball next week. It's been a little bit of a while since we discussed that. Checking the standings, I've seen the Yankees are still absolutely on fire.
I
It's
mean,
really
I've been paying attention. I've been paying
yeah, I've been
attention to
following
baseball
it,
too.
but we just haven't really talked about it like a ton. But I'm sure we'll have a lot of time to dive deep into the in the months of the summer if we want to, and then of course the Olympics coming up and a lot more. But in the meantime, I mean, this has been another episode of Sports Vibe. I'm Arnav Sarkar once again signing off for Jitesh Krishnan, and as always, we'll see you next week.